Welcome to the Southeastern 14 podcast for Tuesday. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Barry Allen joins me. Barry, another late night of monitoring SEC baseball, and what a night it was. You had Arkansas and LSU getting some late inning wins. You had the Mississippi schools advancing. Both those maybe a little bit more interesting than those fan bases would have preferred, but here we are. The SEC has 6 of the final 16 teams represented. You got at least one guarantee to Omaha because you got LSU and Tennessee matched up with each other. In any case, it is going to be a real thrill to see how the Supers pan out if they're anything like the regionals were.
Yeah, if they're anything like the regionals, we're in for another thrilling weekend. I mean, we're still not quite through with the regionals yet. As we're taping this, there's still one game going on early this morning, so all the pairings will be set this afternoon, and we'll know who's playing. Well, we already know who's playing who and where. Just trying to finish up one, but certainly a lot of really thrilling, compelling games and some great storylines, throughout, the last 4 or 5 days, and I'm certainly sure that will continue next weekend with the SEC being well represented and just a lot of key matchups as we get closer to Omaha.
You stayed up and watched that LSU game last night, which basically the Tigers won on a balk, among other things. That, I know you said, was one of the more thrilling games you've seen in a while. How crazy is it that Paul Maneri is going to Knoxville for a rematch of an earlier series?
Well, it's kind of like 2 years ago when Mike Martin retired and no one thought he would win at Georgia, and he wins at Georgia, and then he goes on the road and wins. I think he won at LSU and knocked LSU out, and his last hurrah ended in Omaha. That's possible with this team. I like Tennessee, but I'm not counting these guys out. I mean, the game last night was thrilling. I mean, it was 3.5 hours of just high drama and tension from the start. LSU was, in a pitching hole. They didn't really have, a guy to run out there, so they started Mikael Hilliard on 2 days rest. He gave them an inning. They used 4 freshmen in the rotation as well, and then lo and behold, you look up in the 7th inning, and in comes Landon Marceau, and he closes it out for them. So, had a game that had 5 lead changes in the game. I mean, Gavin Dugas was the MVP of the regional. He hit 2 home runs. Drew Bianco hit 2 home runs. And LSU scores the winning run on a balk. And it was a weird play. I'm sitting here on the couch. I asked my wife this morning. I said, "I didn't wake you up last night, did it?" She said, "No, why?" And I said, "Because I yelled, 'That's a balk!'" when I saw it. I mean, it was so obvious. All 4 umpires called it. The LSU hitter, the guy on deck, the guy on third, and the third base coach. I mean, everybody in the park knew it. And it's situation where they were expecting a squeeze bunt, and the first baseman comes charging down the line, and the pitcher had picked the first base about 1,000 times. It wasn't that much, but it seemed like it. Picks again, and he throws the ball to the first baseman who's not at first base, and you got to be on the bag to receive the throw, and it's a balk. You don't. And it was that obvious. And then they got a base hit and extended the lead by 2 and needed that run because Oregon scored a run in the bottom of the 9th. But, thrilling game, gutsy performance by LSU. They interviewed one of the players after the game, and they said that they didn't want this ride to end. That coach had done so much for them, and he said we want to keep him in the dugout as long as we can. But 4 straight elimination games for LSU to win, truly remarkable. I mean, as I wrote and put on our site this morning before I went to bed, this is a team that last Monday wasn't even sure they were going to be in the tournament. Got in as one of the last teams selected, was sent to Eugene, and then lost to Gonzaga the first night. And you thought, well, the committee messed up. LSU's 2 and out, and then they four elimination game wins later, they proved they belong, and they're headed to Super Regional for the 15th time in LSU history, which is the second most behind Florida State all time.
One of the funniest things I saw in the aftermath of that game, the Twitter handle Podcat, it's at Valley Shook, has it's an old Oregon Trail thing, and it's a graphic. It's a tombstone that says, "Here lies Oregon, died of bulk."
I saw you had retweeted that this morning. I thought that was funny. And
That was great.
And in a nutshell, that's it. Our season ended because of a balk, and that's true. The winning run scored, or the go ahead run, scored on a balk, but LSU had something to do with that as well. But I thought that was hilarious. Knowing the old Oregon Trail, and that I think it was a video game that played many, many years ago. A lot of people don't even know there were video games back then. We used to have these things called Atari for the young generation out there, that you plugged it into the television and you sat there. You couldn't watch TV while you were playing, and you could play these games, but the younger generation, they would have no idea what that is. So, but it was fun, and I thought that was very funny and very fitting, the way to describe the Ducks season, last night.
Well, boy, speaking of witty Twitter handles, the Ole Miss Coke bottle has a Twitter handle now that I have followed. I guess you saw that the guy chugging 2 liters of Coke and then needing a little rest.
Oh, no doubt. The guy with the beard in the outfield. And,
yes.
He's chugging the 2 liter, and Tom Hart and Kyle Peterson picked up on that very quickly Sunday, and that has gone viral, and it's that's why college baseball is so fun. I mean, you don't see this in college football. You don't see this in the basketball. That's why college baseball is so fun. It's so human. People can relate to that. A lot of guys can look and go, "Well, I could do that. I mean, I'm a large man with a beard and a belly and a Coke bottle. I could do that." And you can relate to things that happen. It's just so unique to baseball, and the fan support, the crowds. I mean, it was an energetic crowd in Oregon last night, but it wasn't full. And then you flip over to ESPNU, and you watch a little bit of Stanford and UC Irvine as their game is going on simultaneously. And there's like 75 people in the stands at Stanford. And you're like, okay, is this still one of the California counties that hadn't bought into the fact that we can, get out of our houses now, or they just don't care about baseball at Stanford? And I went to Stanford twice with Alabama in regionals, and neither time did they have any kind of a crowd. And I was out there one year, and Loyola Marymount was no-hitting Stanford in the 7th inning. And the Stanford crowd was just kind of like, yeah, oh, well. We made fun of them by saying, well, this is a nice pitcher they have. And I said, could you imagine that LSU is at home in a regional being no-hit in the 7th inning? They'd be cussing the coach and the president and the AD and everybody in the stands and on the team. I said, these people are just so passive out here with this, but it's, just the crowds. But then you look at Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Arkansas, and of course you expect that. I mean, 10,000 people in these parks. And if I don't want to make anybody mad, because we got a lot of fans and I got a lot of friends in places in all these schools around the league. But if there's a better college baseball atmosphere, I'm not talking about stadium, I'm just talking about atmosphere. If there's a better atmosphere than Arkansas, please send me to that stadium, because I want to go.
I'm with you. And you've given me a lot here. Like, I went to a game at Stanford for their opening series. I want to say this was 09 or 10. And I just remember walking in that place and watching the game, and there were, I don't know, maybe 400 or 500 people there. And it was just a golf clap atmosphere.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? I'm used to the SEC. And so there's that. Arkansas, that looked just electric last night. I mean, Tennessee, they're feeling it there now. We've talked about that. Florida's the one that I just shake my head at and go, what is the deal here? But yeah, most of these places, and I think that's where TV has helped too, right, Barry? I mean, just the network has brought exposure, the SEC network, to the product that you and I have loved for a while. And I think people are tuning in going, hey, man, this is really cool. And I'll get to the ballpark and experience it for myself. And then it's a whole different experience once you're in the buildings. And yeah, it's like you've got these lists of some programs that just get it and some programs that just seem to have just missed out entirely.
Well, I think ESPN and the SEC network has really helped that. I mean, I think, in the 80s, even go back 30 years or more, when ESPN started doing these Sunday night games, and that's the only game you could get And they would go to Mississippi State, and you'd have Sam Rosen and Jim Cott, doing their open in the left field lounge, and that's unique. And Mississippi State, and LSU, the first two teams to kind of get it and take baseball seriously and go to the next level with it. And they created an atmosphere, but I think ESPN has helped that, grow even more. I mean, they talk on ESPN about the Carnegie Hall of college baseball being Dudy Noble Field, and everybody knows if you just said the left field lounge to the college baseball fan, everybody go, oh, you've been to Mississippi State. And then last year or 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago, Tom and KP actually did a broadcast from the left field loft, and they stayed there. That was where they stayed, and they ate, and they fed them, and they did the game from there, and they've made it iconic. They've made Swayze Field iconic because of the right field showers in the outfield when they hit home runs. They've made Swayze Field iconic because of the red Solo Cup races that they have between innings. I think it's the third or fourth inning. They have a red Solo Cup, a yellow Solo Cup, and a blue Solo Cup. People dressed up as these, and they have races. And the red Solo Cup usually wins, and that's a big deal in Oxford to those people. And I think ESPN has brought that out where people know, oh, you go to Ole Miss. Did you see the Solo Cup races? And even in Arkansas now, I mean, the atmosphere there is crazy, and they wear beer mug hats on their heads with the bases loaded. Some of these people in the sections, and because of the deal, the quote unquote bases drunk, and they have all these. People have these hats that look like beer mug, and they wear them when Arkansas loads the bases, and they only wear them when the bases are loaded, because they call bases drunk, and they just have a great time. And I don't know if you saw the tweet from New Jersey Tech, but they had several of their players yesterday did a video thanking the people of Arkansas for the hospitality. And one kid said, I'd like to thank my coaches and teammates and my parents for the opportunity to play. Thank God for the ability to play baseball, but I also want to thank God for allowing us to go to the NCAA tournament and play at Arkansas, because that's the greatest experience I've ever had in my baseball life, and it's something I'll never forget. And when they lost on Sunday, they didn't fly out till Monday, and the New Jersey Tech players are in the hog pen last night or Sunday night in left field cheering for Arkansas and eating and having a great time. And it's just, you don't get that anywhere else. In fact, I saw a tweet from one of the New Jersey Tech parents that said, this experience at Baum Stadium is crazy. Said, imagine the Newark airport on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, except these people are nicer and more gracious. And that was his tweet. and it was just incredible at how these atmospheres are. And it's so fun that ESPN captures this, and that people see, how much fun college baseball is. And, yet we still fight battles with, just 11 scholarships and whatever. But, nothing can take away that experience from those kids for New Jersey Tech and some of these other people that have gone places, Fairfield going to Texas. Some of these kids, they'll never experience anything like that ever again. And it's a great experience for them. I'm really thrilled for them.
Yeah, that community in Fayetteville, I think, just went out of its way, as you kind of said. I saw some other tweets and things and some tweeted videos that were just really cool. But before we move back on to baseball, I got to circle back to our friend, the Coke bottle guy. Did you see the look on his face after he downed that thing? And he sat there for a good 30 seconds, and he was just thinking, like, this seemed like a good idea, and then upon the execution, maybe not as much. It was so funny.
Yeah, you chug a soda pop like that really fast, it can burn and hurt really bad if you're not really careful. And I'm sure he was wishing after he got through with that to go, well, maybe that wasn't the greatest idea of all. But hey, he got on television, he's on the internet, he went viral. If that's his goal, he made it, and it was a great night, and just adds to the fun of what college baseball really is.
Let's go to Arkansas for a minute. My goodness, Kevin Kopps. I'm just running out of stuff to say. I think that his nickname, I called him Old Hoss Radborn on Twitter last night. And I think maybe that's appropriate. But I had another one. I can't remember if I bounced this one off you or not. But I think Groundhog Day could also be appropriate for Kevin Kopps because it's the same thing over and over.
I like you said, I don't know what else you can say about him, how many other adjectives you can use to describe him. What he did in the regional was phenomenal. I saw a tweet last night after the game from an Arkansas fan that said, when I'm leaving the stadium tonight, if they're not already building a Kevin Kopps statue, they have messed up. There needs to be a life-size Kevin Kopps statue in front of our stadium. And if that's not underway as we leave tonight, they've messed up. And I guess that's the ultimate compliment. Carson Shaddy tweeted last night, former Arkansas catcher, that he proclaimed Kevin Kopps as the greatest baseball player in the history of Arkansas baseball. And I saw that, and I said, I agree, Carson. And I shared our link on our website to the story that we wrote about Kevin Kopps and Tim Elko becoming folk heroes, and wanted him to see that, exactly what Kevin Kopps did this weekend. You watch him and you go, wow. And then you come back the next weekend and he's in and you go, yeah. But every weekend he wows you. I mean, it's just, I don't even know that Dave Van Horn doesn't go wow every time he sees him. And he sees the guy every day. We just see him on the weekends. They're around him every day. And I think he wows him. I mean, just the things he does. I mean, Friday he comes in, it's not going well against New Jersey Tech. And I don't think they're going to lose to New Jersey Tech, but, it's just not going well. And it just seems like the players are stressed out. The fans are stressed out. It's just not quite. So in the third or fourth inning, he brings in Kevin Kopps. And what does he do? He comes in and he just settles everything down. Just calm down. Everything's good. And it's almost like you can look and see, oh, Kopps is on the mound. We're going to win. And then they score 7 runs in the bottom of the inning. I had the pleasure of knowing Mel Allen, who's an Alabama alum and a great broadcaster for the Yankees for many years and the voice of This Week in Baseball. And he told me a story one time. He said, it was almost like, the Yankees, they knew they were never going to lose. They were never out of a game. They were never going to lose. He goes, I remember one day, Whitey Ford was on the mound. It wasn't a Whitey Ford kind of day. Just didn't have a good start. And he said, I remember watching him take his hat off and take a deep breath. And he stepped off the mound and he walked out between the mound and second base and just kind of stood there and stared out towards the bleachers and came back and he kind of settled down and pitched really well. And he said, I remember asking when the game was over, I said, Whitey, what was there in the second inning when things were kind of going a little rough? You stepped off the mound. He goes, oh, I walked out there and just stood on the grass and looked in the outfield. And when I saw DiMaggio and Mantle, I was like, you know what? We're better than them. And I said, we were okay. He said, they were kind of like my calming force. And he said, when I saw those two guys in the outfield, I'm like, yeah, just throw strikes. We're good. And they end up coming back winning the game. And that's kind of, like Kopps, just calm down. Everything's good. And then he came in Saturday night. Things are a little shaky against Nebraska. They bring him in. And then last night they wasted no time. Went to him really quick. He went 7 innings and they found a way to win the game. And they got a massive 3-run pinch hit homer from Charlie Welch in the 8th inning and end up winning the game. And shockingly, Kevin Kopps was the MVP of the Fayetteville Regional.
He threw, 24 pitches against NJIT on Friday, I think 71 on Saturday, and then 90 last night. Have you ever seen anything like that in terms of a pitcher just being run out there for that volume of work?
No, I haven't. I was trying to think. I know Tennessee used R.A. Dickey a lot in 1996. In fact, he threw 11 innings against Alabama in the SEC tournament. Came back the next week in the regional, started on Friday, and I think he pitched again on Sunday. And then they did not have Super Regionals at that time. But I do remember that. Rod Delmonico using Dickey. a lot in the postseason, and it worked for them. I don't think they didn't make it to Omaha in '96 with Dickey, but they had a good run with him. And I remember other teams, having guys, could pitch, multiple days, and but Nikhazy came back on a day's rest. Landon Marceau this week came back on a day's rest, and but I just don't remember anybody that pitched that many innings through that many pitches over a short period of time. I mean, he went 13 innings. He threw 190 pitches, 6 hits and 15 strikeouts, no runs and no walks. And he had 7 scoreless innings and struck out 8 in the win yesterday against Nebraska. And the first time you see him, he's hard, and then you get him a second time, you get him you get him a third time, you think, well, things are different. Well, he was better the third time than he was the second time and the first time. And Nebraska saw him Saturday night, and then they had him again for the second time on Monday. And I thought he was better last night than he was on Saturday night. And I don't think Nebraska had much of a clue what was going on with him on the mound. I mean, just one of those guys that can just go every day. And it's, a phenomenal story. And we wrote something about him and Tim Elko. It's on our site about them being, SEC folk heroes. And I think, you said it, and I used your line in the story that, if they did a Mount Rushmore of Arkansas players, Kevin Kopps would be on there. And Carson Shaddy backed us up by saying last night he was the best player in the history of Arkansas baseball. So, I mean, you just run out of things to say about the guy, and nothing surprises you. You see him, and I'm not surprised. If he went to Omaha and pitched in every game and won every game, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Well, and look, a lot has been made of pitcher use, and you see some stuff in regionals. We've talked about it with some other schools, and we'll get to Ole Miss in a minute. And you talked about LSU throwing its number one starter. Ole Miss did the same. We'll get to the Rebels here in a couple of minutes. But the weird thing with him, he's 24. I don't think he's considered a significant pro prospect. Now, I think he'll get drafted in the 20 rounds. But between the age and the fact that he's basically a 1, maybe 2 pitch guy, and that pitch, I don't know if I think it's called a cutter. I don't know if it's slider or cutter. I think that sometimes there's a lot of leeway between what pitches are officially named, but whatever that breaking pitch that he throws that goes down and away from right-handers is just one of the most lethal pitches I've ever seen. But with him, the velo didn't drop, and I know velo is not really his thing, but I wonder if this is one of those cases where it's just a special situation, because everybody on Twitter last night is up in arms about the pitch count. And I'm not saying automatically that's not right. Maybe that's the right stance, but he's just a different guy. I don't know what to make of him. I've never seen anything like him, but it just seemed like the workload did not bother him at all last night. And sometimes with some guys, almost having a tired arm like a knuckleballer. Sometimes they say you're better as a knuckleballer when you're a little bit fatigued. I don't know if that dynamic is in play with Kevin Kopps. Again, this guy's a unicorn. I've never seen anything like it before, and I'm just amazed. But the pitch counts and the way that he was able to go through that without losing any effectiveness was just crazy.
Well, he started his career at Arkansas in 2016. Raise your hand if you can remember what in the world went on in 2016. That seems like years ago. He's redshirted. He pitched in 17 as a redshirt freshman, and then he had Tommy John surgery in 2018 and missed the entire season. So he's already been reconstructed. And you talk about those knuckleballer type guys, R.A. Dickey, who we mentioned, carried that load at Tennessee. He had that, and now he resurrected his career as a knuckleball pitcher in the big leagues and pitched for quite a while after his Tommy John surgery. And Bobby Sproul, who's the head coach here at Shelton State Community College in Tuscaloosa, pitched for the Phillies and the Astros in the big leagues, teammates with Joe Niekro. And he was telling me a story one time about Joe Niekro. Didn't exactly get curfew right one night. Came rolling in, and he goes, "Joe, what's up, man? You pitching today?" He goes, "Oh," he said, "I'll be fine, Bobby." He said, "You got to get the muscles relaxed. All your muscles have to be really relaxed." He goes, "It'll be a nice, soupy 120-degree day on that rug in St. Louis. He goes, you got to get those muscles right so that knuckleball will dance. He said Necro pitched like a one-hit shutout, 7 innings, and struck out like 12 against the Cardinals. And, the Astros won. And he goes, see, I told you. It's all about the muscle, all about just being relaxed. And I guess, with the Tommy John surgery, I guess that's just part of him. And with the fact that he's older and he's probably not a high, draft pick or a prospect. And I mean, Dave Van Horn's not going to do anything to damage this kid. I mean, that's not his deal. He's not, I'm pitching you till you die. He's not going to do that. If Kevin Kopps told him he wasn't ready to go, he wouldn't pitch. If Kevin Kopps wants the ball, I mean, you're going to give it to him. Kevin Kopps knows Kevin Kopps better than anybody. And the same with these guys that pitch double times in these regionals. I mean, these coaches aren't going to just run guys out there that, we got to win this game. You got to go get me 5 out. I mean, they're not going to do that. But at the same time, they got medical ways now how you can train and do things. And as Ben McDonald pointed out on the telecast last night, it was Landon Marceau's side day after he pitched on Friday. So he said, this is where you throw your, 20, 30, 40 pitches. And he said, that's not going to be a big deal to bring him in the game and use him that way. And we touched on this yesterday about, why there's so many 7th games now. The addition of that one day has made a big difference in this tournament. We used to play the 7 games over 3 days, 2 on Friday, then 3 on Saturday. So your losers bracket game in the morning would come back at night and play the team that lost the middle game. So it was a long day for 2 teams. And then the championship and the if game were on Sunday. And they changed that several years ago and went 2-2-2. And then the if game became Monday. And I think that gives people an advantage because if you pitch a guy on Friday, and this goes to our theory of who do you pitch in the opening game of a series, if you use your number 1 against the team that you think you can beat, and you only let him go 4 or 5 innings, he likely can come back on Monday on his side day and give you another 3 or 4 or 5 innings, and you can use your big gun twice now in the regional. And I think you're seeing that. And in the game today with, as you watch the Old Dominion Virginia game today, this is a game 7 game that's played, and they were scoreless in the 6th inning with 2 guys who've pitched in this tournament already. And it allows you to do that. It gives them, and they have recovery time, and these guys are trained, and these guys have trainers and strength coaches and their own regimented programs. And I don't think it's quite as hard to do that now as it was years ago. And I think you're seeing more and more of it. But I think the advent of the 7th game being on Monday now has really changed the way these teams and coaches and pitchers approach this tournament.
Well, I think it changed the way Ole Miss approached it using Doug Nikhazy, its best arm. The Rebels get through a really tough regional, gets who the most outstanding player is. It's our other folk hero, Tim Elko. Just a terrific story and a joy to watch. What did you make of Ole Miss's run through its regional?
Well, I thought they had a tough regional with Southern Miss and Florida State and even Southeast Missouri State, who unfortunately was bludgeoned by Southern Miss on Saturday, 20-0. But we talked about last week, how that was a hard regional. And if Ole Miss was going to win, they were going to have to Elko somebody, and they did. And he hit a grand slam Friday night. He hit 2 home runs yesterday, including a grand slam in that game yesterday. 2 fantastic tweets I saw yesterday. I'm assuming these are his friends, buddies of his or whatever. And one of the tweets was Elko's bad knee. And it said, pretty amazing. I've hit more grand slams in this regional than I have good ACLs. It said, keep up the good work, friend. And then David Kellum on the broadcast yesterday, the longtime voice of the Ole Miss Rebels, pointed out that Tim Elko has 9 home runs with 2 ACLs and 7 home runs with 1 or with no ACLs and 7 home runs with the torn ACL. So he's almost got as many home runs with a bad knee as he did with 2 good knees. And he's another, folk hero that, we wrote about him and Kopps last night. I mean, he's another folk hero. And I think if you did a Mount Rushmore of Ole Miss baseball, this kid's got to be on it. I mean, and Mike Bianco, couldn't speak highly enough of him last night in a column that Rick Cleveland did for the Jackson paper. It just talked about he's just the calming force of this team, and he goes, he never would have thought after he got hurt that he would play again, and let alone be this dominant. But he said he's just a tough kid and he wants to play, and as long as he's not damaging himself and he's helping the team, and he's certainly done that. He's hit 7 home runs since his return, and he single-handedly helped Ole Miss win yesterday in a game where they combined for 10 home runs. They hit 5. Southern Miss hit 5, and the legend of Tim Elko grows even more, and hopefully he can go to the desert and help Ole Miss do that and get through there against a good Arizona team next week. But the legend of Tim Elko lives on at Swayze Field and at Ole Miss baseball.
Well, on this for Nikhazy, people are going to look at that line. It was an inning and a third. He gave up 2 runs, both earned. Of course, he threw a lot a couple days before that. But where he came in, Ole Miss, just to set the stage here, had a 9-0 lead after 2. But the way Southern Miss can hit and the way the ball gets out of that park, you just can't be too sure. And sure enough, that game got to be, what was it, 11-7 in the 7th, I think it was. And Southern Miss had the bases loaded with 2 outs, I think, and they went to Nikhazy in that spot after Derek Diamond had been in the game. And he gets the out there, I believe, and then gives up a couple the next inning. But he bridges it to Taylor Broadway. He finishes off with 2 shutout innings, and here's Ole Miss advancing. And so, again, you look at the box score, and the contribution may not show up as that important, but in the context of the situation, it very much was.
Yeah, and you go back to Friday night, too, when he's got 117, 118 pitches through 7 innings. 16 strikeouts, and they take him out. You're like, wow, why don't you let him go one more inning and get that 17th strikeout and be the school single game record holder? Well, there's why they didn't do it. Because Mike Bianco is thinking ahead, looking to Monday and go, what, if I get him out now and he does the things he's supposed to do, I might be able to use him Monday for 10, 20 pitches if I need him in a key spot. And lo and behold, they needed him in a key spot. You're right. It's 9-0, then it's 10-7, and it ends up being 12-9. But he was able to get Nikhazy in for some work yesterday, got him through that spot, and then turned the game over to Taylor Broadway, who recorded a save in every Ole Miss win in that regional, and got the save yesterday with Nikhazy getting the win. So Nikhazy gets 2 wins. And Broadway gets 3 saves, and people go, well, he's abusing his. No, he's not. He knew. He's thinking Friday night, because I said that. Why wouldn't you let him get the record? And then now you see him come in on Monday, and I go, oh, now I know why they took him out Friday night after 7 innings and saved him. He could have let him go Friday night and finish, but he might not have been available for tomorrow or yesterday, and then they may have lost that game. So now they're still playing. They know their pitchers, they know their staffs, and you just, like I said, these guys are trained, and I mean, he's going to ask him, I'm sure he trusts Doug Nikhazy enough to go, look, if I want to try to use you today, I need you to be honest with me. How do you feel, Coach? I feel good. I can give you an inning, maybe 2, but I feel good, and I think he'd be honest with him in that. And I think if he didn't, I think he'd say, Coach, I just don't think I don't think I can do it today. I don't feel right. And I would hope that he would be honest and say that. And I think he would. And it was just the way it worked out for them, and they were able to do it. And he was able to come in and get them out of a spot and turn it over to Broadway. And, they were able to outslug Ole Miss or Southern Miss and win the regional.
Well, speaking of predictability, it was sort of predictable how things went down on Monday for Mississippi State. Just Bristo's not been really good for them lately. He started. He's a talented kid. I think he's a freshman. But he goes a third of an inning, gives up 3. They bring in Houston Harding, who's pretty good. He goes 5 in relief, and I think he's been their weekday starter, if I recall correctly, but he's also been used some out of the pen. He strikes out 10 in 5 innings, makes the all-regional team, and then they bridge with Preston Johnson to get to Landon Sims, who did Landon Sims things. He goes 3 innings, only throws 37 pitches, has a double with nobody out in the ninth, and State would have had a chance. No, actually Campbell was the home team in that game, I think. So that State would have, even if he'd blown it, had a chance to make that up in another elimination game. So if they lose it, they still have a chance to win the regional, is what I'm trying to say. But Sims shuts it down from there. That run never crosses home. And Mississippi State played much better than it did in Hoover, and now is advancing and will face, let's see, I've got my bracket in front of me. Notre Dame. Oh, that's right, Notre Dame. Which Notre Dame, nobody blew through a regional like the Irish did. I think the combined score on that one was 50-5. But what did you make of the Starkville Regional, Barry?
Well, I thought it was fairly easy. I thought they had a good draw. VCU's a nice team. They had the nation's longest winning streak coming in. I think we said this last Tuesday or something as we were previewing the regionals, but that's 2 NCAA tournaments in a row that Mississippi State has hosted the team with the nation's longest winning streak in a regional and played them in game 2. Had a much easier time with VCU than they did with Central Michigan in 2019. Stanford's a nice team, good team. 4 that Mississippi State's familiar with, that beat them by double-digit runs in the midweek with their midweek pitching. Struggled a little bit against Stanford, but beat VCU pretty easily, and then had the day off on Sunday to rest and be able to play a weary Campbell team who hung with them. I had seen that movie before, the Fristoe Harding movie. I saw it in Tuscaloosa 3 weeks ago. Fristoe did the final game of the series, was not good. Left the game. They were behind 3-0 after 2 innings. They brought Harding in, and at one point I think he retired 16 in a row. Mississippi State got back in the game and won it, and then they went to Johnson and Sims and closed out that game as well. So that 4-man combination had worked for them before. Harding was really good against Alabama 2 weeks ago. He was really good against Campbell yesterday. Kind of surprised and made him their number 3 guy, but I think they're comfortable with his role coming out of the pen. Big left-hander coming in and just pounding the strike zone, and he did that yesterday. And they had just enough offense yesterday to win, and they got through that regional, which wasn't one of the tougher regionals, but they will be hosting Notre Dame in a super regional this week. And of course, we'll talk more about these super regionals, as the week goes along. But to me, I think that's probably super regional number 1. If you ranked them 1 to 8 on the list, I'd probably be the number 1 super regional out there. Just names and expectations and what Notre Dame did, with 50 runs in 3 games and in their regional at home this week, and coming to Mississippi State, maybe not an iconic baseball name, but just an iconic sports name. Notre Dame, coming south and playing in an iconic baseball venue like Mississippi State's Dudy Noble Field. And, Notre Dame's coach, Link Jarrett, who played for Mike Martin at Florida State, he certainly knows what it's like to win a regional, and he certainly knows what it's like to go to Omaha. And I think that's probably going to be one of the marquee super regionals that we talk about in the next few days.
Yeah, I do as well. Before we move on to talk a couple more things, one thing that I've looked at when I've watched State, and this is really an issue for LSU too, I look at the top part of that order and I go, boy, there's some bats there. Tanner Allen and Rowdy Jordan at the top. Logan Tanner usually hits middle of the order. He's been very formidable, especially considering he's a catcher. Luke Hancock's been pretty good at times, but Cameron James wins the MVP of that regional. He's now got double-digit home runs. I still am not crazy about part of that order, but that might be enough given how deep that bullpen is to get them through to Omaha, especially with the way James hit this weekend.
Yeah, I think they have enough. Their pitching is just super, super talented. I would think McLeod would get game 1. They're going to play on Saturday. So I think McLeod would get game 1. He would be Saturday to Saturday. And I think they would probably go Bednar in game 2. They may save the way they did last weekend, and then try to figure out what game 3 is if they play that on Monday next week. So, but their bullpen is really good. I mean, we've thrown out names. We've thrown out Harding. We've thrown out Preston Johnson. We've thrown out Landon Sims. I mean, they have other guys that come in and pitch. I mean, they're just so deep on the mound. I don't know if the Notre Dame can match them on the mound. Notre Dame's going to hit, and they're going to score some runs, and Mississippi State's going to have to do that. But I think they have enough on offense to get through that like they did in this regional. And I think their pitching is going to be what gets them through. And then, if you get to Omaha, you got days off. That helps guys like, Landon Sims, and it helps guys like Preston Johnson and the Devin Cox and stuff in the SEC. When you have days off, that really helps. And so I think this will be a very intriguing series this weekend for Mississippi State.
I want to save some material to preview Super Regionals later, but were there any loose ends that we didn't tie up with the regionals that we want to get to before we end today's episode?
No, I think we expected, a number of SEC teams to get in, and we did. I think Florida we expected. I think LSU was kind of a surprise. Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I think they were teams that we thought, that they would get in. I think this maybe non-SEC looking, Texas had a pretty easy draw, and now they're going to play South Florida. I think their path to Omaha is pretty easy. South Florida and South Alabama ended up playing the game 7 in Gainesville, knocked out the 2 giants, Miami and Florida. South Florida winning it. I mean, this is a South Florida team that had a losing record on May the 1st, much like Jacksonville, and turned it around at the end and won the American tournament. They're 31-28 now. But they had a losing record several weeks ago and turned it around. South Alabama, the proverbial Omaha jinx, hits them again. I think that was their 27th NCAA regional. They have still yet to win a regional. This is a team that's had John Lieber and I forget, Mike Mordecai, Luis Gonzalez. Eddie Stanky was their head coach at one time. I mean, these guys have put some guys in the big leagues. They've had some really good, Lance Johnson. I mean, they've had some big time players at South Alabama that they've just never been able to get over the hump. And I was watching them yesterday, and I go, well, they're one win away. They've always been one win away. They lost to LSU in Baton Rouge in an if game one year. They lost to Southern Cal in an if game one year. Lost to Clemson in an if game. They've always been just one win away, and they've just never been able to do it. And again, the Omaha jinx got them again. Still haven't been. East Carolina, who's in a super regional, they've won regionals. They've just never been to Omaha. I think I saw a graphic yesterday. They have the most NCAA tournament appearances among active teams that have never been to Omaha. And then they've got a tough chore, going to Vanderbilt. So we'll get into super regionals as we get into the week. But just good play by some SEC teams, some that were a little surprising. And then, I think there'll be some interesting matchups as we get closer to this week and try to build towards Omaha.
Yeah, a lot to digest. Again, I want to leave a little bit for future episodes and for some web content. But anyway, thank you for listening to the Tuesday episode of The 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We will be back with more later this week. Be sure and check our content out at southeastern14.com. Thanks to Barry Allen. I'm Chris Lee. We'll see you again really soon.